Hello and welcome to yet another Wild About Work video. Today I want to talk about something that may seem a little counterintuitive, but I think is really potentially very powerful, and that is how do you harness your fear and ride it to success? I want to tell you a little bit about what I mean by that. Well, first, I think I'm going to talk about fear. There are really two different kinds of fear. One is a limiting fear, and that's what we tend to think about. And the other is really a productive fear. And the difference between those two is often what you do when that fear comes up. So the limiting fear is really the one that we all feel pretty familiar with. That is the fear comes up and you clench up and it's like, oh, I really don't want to do that. And often, far too often, what ends up happening is we don't do what we want to do because the fear comes up, stops us, we're done. Productive fear is really fear that is serving the role fear is there to play. And the fear is there to play the role of keeping you from getting hurt, keeping you from falling on your face, keeping you from failing. And the trouble is when we let fear get in the driver's seat, and let's face it, fear is a bad driver, and it just ends up parking it on the street, says, I'm not going anyplace, it's too dangerous a world out there. So what I want to talk about today is getting fear out of the driver's seat, letting it do some navigation, but not too much, and really put the fear that we inevitably are going to feel anytime we do something really cool or juicy or big or ultimately really worth doing. Often fear kicks up. So one of the problems is that fear really doesn't have that wide a perspective on things. It's pretty black and white. Either you are in the comfortable little track and I'm going along and I'm not really feeling like there's any pain. I'm not really feeling like anything is going wrong. I feel okay. Fear isn't up. Or, uncertainty, doubt. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I may die. Well, maybe not, but it kind of feels that way. And so fear goes, and it's this very black and white uncertainty, doubt, not sure what's going to happen. Up comes the fear, and the little reptile brain starts saying, no, I don't think so, and it stops us. So what I want to talk today about is how do you change that? How do you get it out of that place where it's just putting a stop to things and actually turning it from limiting fear into that productive fear that I was talking about? So there are many different ways of doing this, but what I want to talk about today is really 4 questions that you can ask. And 4 questions that you can ask to turn that fear from the gut-wrenching, limiting fear into something that you can actually put to use to maximize your potential of success in whatever it is that you're doing. So the first question is simply, what am I afraid of? This seems a pretty good place to start, because if you are just all caught up in the gut-wrenching, this is uncomfortable, I think I'm going to stop, that's not going to get you anywhere. So really get specific about what is it that I'm afraid of. So let's say you've got this dream to publish a book. And every time you think about taking steps, you get that clench and you somehow creatively find a way not to do it. Sound remotely familiar? Maybe not a book, maybe something else. So think about that. So, okay, what am I afraid of? Well, I'm afraid of using this book example. Maybe I'm afraid of rejection. Maybe I'm afraid of having that rejection mean that, see, my ideas aren't worth publishing. I shouldn't have even tried because then I would at least have my dreams and blah, 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 blah. And so ultimately what you're afraid of is hearing no and getting rejected. And so you say, okay, great. That and ultimately feeling like a failure. And so then you can say, okay, great. My fear is that I'm going to feel like a failure with this. My fear is that I'm going to fail. I'm going to try this and I'm going to fail and and fall on my face. Okay, so then the next question, you've gotten very specific about what that fear is. Then the next question is, great, now I know what that fear is. How can I prevent that fear? What are the things that I can put into place that will allow me to maximize the potential of success? Nothing's guaranteed, of course, but there are things that you can do that are going to maximize the potential for success and minimize the potential for failure. And so this is a great place to start to really say, wow, you know, that fear is there for a reason. That fear is there to keep me safe. It really drives pretty poorly, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to take the steering wheel back. Thank you, fear, for alerting me to this. Now I'm going to take a look at what I can do with this little warning flag that I've seen. So what can I do to prevent this outcome that I'm afraid of? I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of whatever it happens to be. The third piece of the third question. What do I need to be aware of as I'm going along that has the potential to lead me to this result that I'm trying not to get? A great example of that is this tendency so many of us have in our minds to get in our ways. I mean, the biggest obstacle for so many of us, me, for example, is right between these, right between our ears. And so if you've got some kind of negative story that's kicking up, if you've got some kind of tape that keeps playing, see, I can't do this, see, what am I thinking? You know, whatever it happens to be, we all have these limiting stories. Often, if we're not really aware of it, it can just be spinning around there and it can feel like reality. But it's not reality, it's just a story. It's a very convincing story quite often. But being aware that there is this, here's this thing that I do. I take a step and then I have this story that says, see, you can't do this. Why are you even trying? And then I go, power down. So being aware, hey, here's this thing that I do. I'm going to watch out for that. And when I notice that I'm doing that, here are some steps that I can take to get me back, to rein myself back in. So being aware is a really important piece of the puzzle. You can't do anything about what you're not aware of. So being aware of the kinds of things that get in the way, or the kinds of things that are that lend themselves to the outcome that you don't want to experience. Then there is the question of, okay, how do I prepare for all of this? Now we're doing groundwork before you've even taken any action. So this is all about really getting a good solid feel for, I've got some fear. Now what do I do with this to maximize my potential for success, my potential for not getting this outcome that the fear is afraid of getting? And so really two really easy ways of approaching that preparation is, one, just really brainstorming what are the failure factors. Here is this goal that I want to achieve. Here is this something that I'm wanting to attempt. What are the things that could possibly get in the way of that succeeding? I mean, here is a great place for your inner pessimist to go hog wild and say, well, I couldn't, you know, this and this and this and this and this and this. Oh, did I mention this and this and this and this and this? We all have a voice in our head, sometimes louder than others, that will go to town on all of the reasons why something won't work, all of the factors that could lead to failure. The flip side of that is, what are the success factors? What could I put into place that are going to maximize my potential for success? Then the final piece is not so much about minimizing or maximizing the potential for success or failure. It's really about, okay, let's say I do fail. Let's say this thing that I'm afraid of actually takes place. what can I do? What can I do to reduce the impact of that? What can I do to make that not as scary? What can I do to make that not as painful? One example is, back to the idea of publishing a book. One example is to simply say, you know what? I recognize that publishing a book is can be a long process. I recognize that getting to yes can be a long process. And so if I hear no from a publisher, which from everything I've read is very likely, from all the people that I've talked to who have published books, it seems to be pretty likely that you're going to get some no's. Instead of letting that trigger the story, remember the limiting story we were talking about earlier? Instead of letting that trigger a story, say, oh yeah, here's one of those rejections that I was expecting, that I suspected was going to come. Okay. Hope that I don't get too many of these, but this is part of the process. And that's a very different experience than, see, I completely suck. I don't know why I'm even trying. Nobody wants to hear my ideas, whatever it happens to be. So what you can do, and then also simply having people in the picture. The last video I made was about support, and one of those was the emotional support. Having people in the picture that can help soften the blows if they come as you are attempting whatever it is that you're attempting. And so the more you can do to mitigate the pain, not sure if I actually used that word right, but it sounded good at the time. The more that you can do to soften the pain as you experience it, the less you get clenched up about it all, and the less it stops you. So those are some ideas on how you can make fear your friend, on how you can harness fear and ride it to success by using it really as a flag to help guide you, not as somebody behind this wheel who's stepping on the brakes and saying, heck no, I'm not going to do this. So thank you for joining me for another Wild About Work podcast. If you find what I'm talking about here valuable, I would love to have you subscribe, come along for the ride. And if you don't want to wait for the next video to come around, go on over to wildaboutwork.com, and if you look at the top of the site on the free audio course button, you click on that button and you will be able to download, wait for it, a free audio course on how to get wild about work. So I look forward to having you take part and having you continue to be along for the ride. Thank you very much and enjoy. Bye-bye.